Do you remember learning about that thing that Germans did back in the 1930s and even into the early 1940s when thousands of them would gather in a stadium like in Nuremberg? And all at once, thousands of people would try to hail a taxi. And I guess it was some kind of humor, but whatever, community activity, but whatever. They never seemed to get a taxi, but this little guy with a mustache would get up and yell at him for an hour or two. Well, they're doing that again, only it's not the Germans. It is a little group of Italians that gathered somewhere, I think it was in Rome, and they too got together and all at once they tried to hail a taxi. It's called the Roman salute, and when they did that, people really got upset because apparently it is reminiscent of a time in European history, Italy, Germany in particular, in which some people felt oppressed. Okay, I'm understating that a little bit. Some people actually were oppressed under that socialist extremist regimes, more than one, one in Italy, one in Germany. And the reason they did that, these people gathered in Rome to do this, is because they were commemorating the death of two members of their group, or two young people who were like-minded, who were killed by extremists, by leftists, and so they were just having a memorial. Some years later, I don't see that that is a particular problem, even if you disagree with people, freedom of expression. And when I'm thinking about the Roman salute, does it really hurt anybody? Call it a Roman salute or hailing a taxi, whatever you want to call it. Does it really hurt anybody? The action in and of itself is about as harmless as flipping a peace sign or flipping something else. It's just a symbol. Now, it can be provocative, but if we're going to silence any free speech that is provocative, well, what do? You can't just say nothing, because saying nothing can be provocative. Silence is violence. So if you say something, you're out of line. If you don't say something, you're out of line. So you're always out of line. These things, it's really tough to legislate them, but they've tried to do that in Italy with obviously marginal success because they're still doing it. Now, one of the issues at hand is the premier of Italy is an individual by the name of Giorgia Meloni. And this individual is known to be, according to the press, a far-right leader, which is kind of rare in Western Europe these days. Now it's getting rare in even Eastern Europe. But, when I read the media calling these people far-right, I wonder why it is that the media never refers to far-left leaders as far-left. It seems you can be extremist right, you can be far right, but you can't be extremist left, you can't be far left. Apparently, the media is under the impression that anything to the left is the center, and there is no left. There's only the far right, and the far left, which they say is just reason. They don't even call it the far left. So one of the sentences in this article that was published by apnews.com said, Mussolini's anti-Jewish laws helped pave the way for the deportation of Italian Jews during the German occupation of Rome in the latter days of World War II. Got a question for you. In American history, we had this episode called The Trail of Tears, where there was an agreement made with multiple Indian leaders, leaders of Indian tribes, where they would relocate, and they literally marched across the United States, or what is now the United States, to the west. But one of the things that is missing from the historical context as it's presented to us is this was by and large a voluntary movement. They had an agreement with the leaders of the tribes that they would do this. And one of the stipulations, if my memory serves me correctly from history class, is they wanted the Indians, Native Americans, make you happy, they wanted to make the Indians become westernized, to give up their traditions. And if they wouldn't do it, well, then we want you to move west and we'll help you out here. In fact, during the Trail of Tears, so-called Trail of Tears, a lot of people are unaware of this, but my understanding was the government provided medical assistance. They actually had nurses, medical professionals accompany these people as they headed out west. What's that got to do with this thing in Italy? Well, they say that this story again said Mussolini's anti-Jewish laws helped pave the way for the deportation of Italian Jews. Notice they said deportation. Well, isn't that basically the same thing as the Trail of Tears? Only instead of moving Indians, you're moving Jews. And something else that's missing is just like the Indian leaders agreed to the deportation of Indians, Jewish leaders agreed to the deportation of Jews. Now, a lot of people are gobsmacked when I say that. And if you are, what you need to do is you need to do a search on what is called the Transfer Agreement. It was a big deal in the 1930s. And historians have just kind of scrubbed that from history books. The fact of the matter is there was an agreement where Jews in Italy would resettle in what then was Palestine. And the objective was to send the best and brightest of the Jewish community to what we now call Israel, the area that we now call Israel, and establish a country. So effectively what they were doing was they were segregating on a global scale. Why is that not talked about in history books? They just totally scrub it. They ignore it. But it was a really a big deal back in the 1930s. That is what launched this whole episode, historical epic episode, that occurred in what some people refer to as the Third Reich. Just a little bit of trivia, Hitler, I'm a little bit hesitant to even say the name because YouTube picks up on these things, but Hitler didn't actually use the term Third Reich. In fact, from what I've read, he didn't even like it. I think one of his promotional gurus, Goering maybe, one of those guys, came up with that term, but Hitler himself didn't like it. So if you call it the Third Reich, that's really not appropriate. But anyhow, the fact of the matter is you got several hundred people raising their arm up in the air, and there are other people who are all upset about that. My feeling is that I don't like it. I don't like socialism in any form. I think it's destructive. I think it's hurtful. But I think there's one thing that is also hurtful, and that is when we try to legislate free speech to a ridiculous, where you can't even raise your arm. That's kind of silly. What if we said you can't give a peace symbol because that is a symbol of extreme leftism? And you know what the leftists did? They massacred millions of people in the Soviet Union. They massacred millions of people in China. Then there was that thing with Pol Pot. There was that thing in Cuba. These people, the far leftists, the woke left, as we now call them, were responsible for killing more people than anybody, period. And their favorite gesture, hypocritically, is the peace sign. That's why I hate the peace sign. It's kind of a passive form of the clenched fist. In my mind, and I'm probably the only person who thinks this way, but when I see a clenched fist or I see a peace symbol, I see a synonymous symbol that both means authoritarianism to the extreme that kills millions of people. Now, there's another thing in this article that referred to Maloney, and it said that whose Brothers of Italy party has its roots in neo-fascism. Pausing here to wonder, aloud if I may, the Democratic Party in the United States, that is, we could say Biden, whose Democratic Party has its roots in the Ku Klux Klan. Well, it did. So can we say that? Or is it fair, honest to say that? Can we draw that conclusion that because It had its roots historically in that particular movement, that today it is still composed of the remnants of that ideology. Well, effectively, that's what they're saying about the Brothers of Italy party, because that political party has its roots in neo-fascism. Then it retains remnants of that ideology, and therefore it should be eschewed. It should be hated. That's just my opinion. And somebody else could have another opinion. Well, maybe you have another opinion. Did I miss something? Did I get something wrong here? Well, guess what? We have a comment section at the bottom of this video, so let us know what you think. Do you think it should be illegal, and apparently it is in Italy, for hundreds of people to get together and hail a taxi at one time? Yes or no? What are your thoughts? Let us know. If you got something out of this video, join our family by hitting the subscribe button. We're a brand new channel, and we have very few viewers, so I actually have time to read the comments. And I usually respond to the comments, so if you want to say something in the comment section, please do. Thanks for stopping by, and see y'all next time.